Until we
Okay,
have the
we're about to record. We're recording. Hi there, it's Martin, it's Nick, and it's a different setting because I'm on holiday and I've done a 12-hour day today. So there you go, working. Um, right,
nice
so
holidays.
yeah, well, hopefully tomorrow won't be as mad. I'm going to start early and then like probably around 7 and then finish at around 1 o'clock or so and then go off and enjoy the beach with my family. But anyway, they're very patient with me, which is good of them. All right, that aside, there's enough of me telling you I'm working hard for you guys. Martin is, well, we both are. And we have a bit of a problem. So the I'll start and then Martin will carry on with the issue. We're getting too many cases where properties are being sold before we get to give feedback to you and then you give feedback to us and then we make the offer. So that the usual cycle is we do the viewing, we wait a day for the feedback, we then do the video for the feedback, and then that could be the same day or the next day. So we're now 2 days in. And then we've got to talk to you, like how much do you want to offer, this, that, the other. And by the time we've done that, that's 3 days potentially. And then if it's a really hot property in a hot area, it's gone. And we've had a succession of these over the last week or so,
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And it's almost like things are reaching fever pitch in certain areas. So what I think is going on is that people are getting desperate, simply. But the prime properties are going like nearly instantaneously. So I think you get a couple of things going on. You're getting sellers who are afraid that the market's going to collapse. So they'll just take the offer. They're not going to hang around and wait for all the viewings to come through. They're getting nervous. They want to sell quick. And then you have buyers who are desperate because there are so many buyers out there. Then this leads to a couple of questions like what's going to happen in the future, etc. But Martin, what's your view on what's going on right now?
Yep, my suggestion, what we have with Nick now, and for example, if the viewing is at 9th of April, we will do the assessment at 8th or 7th of April. So basically, we will conclude like the worst scenario of condition. Based on that, we'll do the assessment and we'll give you the minimum and maximum offer. We can be prepared for when the viewing is at 9, we can send offer. And then we'll be serious consider we don't, maybe we'll have more chance to have it. And after we send the offer, we'll do the assessment of the condition. And based on that, after we can increase or cancel the offer. Better that than be late on the party. So
yeah. Well, this also touches on a few things, just the future capital growth, etc. So I want to talk about that in a minute. But just to reiterate, my general experience with condition is that most of the time, Viewer assessments tell us about the horror stories. So the massive cracks in the wall that the estate agent pictures don't show us, things like that. And I would say that this happens maybe 15% of the time. Most of the time with Viewer assessments, they just tell us what we kind of know, that the property is in poorer condition than the agents have told us there would be. But then we know that's what agents do with their pictures. We know that they kind of show the best side of a property. So therefore, it's really simple. We just get extra conservative on renovations, and we just say, well, we think it's going to cost you 30% more than the pictures suggest. And then at least if those numbers work out, you know that you're okay to go. Now, the other point about the Viewer viewings, which is critical, is that we have to view a property because if we don't, it's considered as a blind offer. If it's a blind offer, it means that the estate agent doesn't take it seriously, the seller doesn't take it seriously, therefore there's no point in offering. So we have to have it. And oddly enough, I know it sounds weird, but you're paying your £45, which we reimburse to you, by the way, in the end, you know, when against all the commission, when we pay the £45, which we do in the end. The reality is that the value of that is largely, I would say 2/3 of that is just the fact that someone showed up, stepped in the door and said, yep, I've seen the property. Because otherwise we can't offer. It's a weird idea to think that, but that's kind of what's going on. So in other words, £30, just turn up and stand there, please, for 2 seconds, walk out and say you saw the property. And the rest is condition stuff. So just to reiterate on Martin, you're going to say, Martin?
Yeah, I want to say that if also there is some really serious issues, the surveyor will pick up. So yeah. So basically, you don't need to be really worried about that. So, and the cost is around 400 or 500 pounds for the surveyor.
Yes, but not to confuse you, just to make it really straightforward. So the process will be not for every property. So properties in Doncaster, Sheffield, Crewe, that kind of thing, we have a bit of time to play with because it's not at insanity levels yet. But for places like Stockport in Manchester, just really hot areas, Swinton, yes.
Salford, yeah.
The way we're going to do this is we book in the viewing if we can get the viewing, and we've done some work on the back end of our systems to improve that. So we used to get property listings for all areas once a day, and now we have prime areas. I think we've got about 20 postcode districts from memory, 25 maybe, I can't remember.
25, yeah, 26, I think it was the number.
And what we do now is we extract all the data from Rightmove, On the Market, and Zoopla every 2 hours during the workday. So whenever something new comes in, we've already run the calculations. We already know roughly what's going on with it. And it's much easier then for Martin, Philip, and Alex to work out, oh, that's interesting, let's share it, kind of thing. But anyway, moving on from that, reiterating the process being, we do the assessment. We'll eventually get the viewer. We'll then assess the viewer for condition. That's like a 15-minute video. It's really straightforward. If we see something really serious that means costs way above our estimate, then we'll say, you'll see the video anyway, because we're going to share it with you. Then, if you buy the property, or if you make the offer and the offer is accepted, then you have a survey done, because you should. And that's done by Royal Chartered Institute of Surveyors, qualified surveyor, and they then go through the property and see what they see. And if they pick up something that's really serious, then we go no. But I will say that of all the properties that I've ever seen, I've never seen a survey which terminated a deal because it was just too nasty. We've always picked up on these things beforehand. Now, I'm not saying we always will, but a combination of paying attention and a viewer report will pick up on serious stuff. And serious stuff is subsidence, by the way. That's typically the only thing that's really nasty, that's in some ways hidden. But on the whole, damp is really easy to spot, and bad roofs and all. Most of it is pretty visible once you see the condition stuff. So anyway, there that is. Now, I want to do something very quickly here. I want to just talk to you about the future of the market, because if we say the market's at insanity level, then what does that mean for you? Like, should you just pause and wait? And I've done this article here, how much higher will house prices go, as you can see. And I'll make a point of linking into that in the description. But anyway, the fact is markets work in cycles, and we're now entering this next cycle, the 9th cycle since 1845. And we're in the boom phase, which is the madness phase. And we're lucky in that we have data going back to, like, reliable data going back to 2003. We've actually got data going back to 1996, but 2003 data is kind of the modern era of the market, and therefore it's quite relevant. And we can see how the market's going. Now, I've shown you this video in other assessments, so if you've seen this again, sorry, but you know, they do say repetition is, repetition means remembering, as it were. And what you got here is the market from 86 through to 91, and you have the peak. And essentially what happens is that people have declining affordability. So this is just how much money do you pay in mortgage costs as a percentage of your pay. And the reason I love this chart is because it gets rid of the question about interest rates. Because interest rates were higher back in the 90s, and they were higher in the 2004 to 2006 phase. And you had exactly the same thing going on, different length, different duration, but you had the same thing going on. And now this one here, which is about 21, so it's about a year out of date, it shows affordability starting to decline. And it's probably like where my little finger is here on the screen. And my guess is that it's going to do exactly this over time.
Yep.
So I think there's headroom in the market. And there's another factor to think about, which is all the macroeconomic stuff. I've talked about this many times. So again, sorry if this is boring you, but the gist is that if you look at this data here from 1900, you can see that World War I brought in a lot of government debt, and World War II made it even worse. And then we had declining government debt as right down at the 70s. So, okay, fine. And then we have, this goes back to 2010. I'm sure there's a more modern map, but I couldn't find one going back to 1900. But anyway, government debt's gone crazy, as you know, because of COVID and so on. And therefore it's a problem. Now, a lot of people look back to the 70s and they go, well, the 70s was a high inflation period and there was also very high interest rates. But the difference is that the government debt was very low in the 70s. And this was debt from individuals, so people borrowing a lot, and the government just nuked the debtors by making interest rates very high. Governments don't nuke themselves if they can possibly manage it. And you can see here, 1915, this is inflation, the red line, this is government, this is interest rates. And you can see that essentially interest rates remained relatively low, like around the 4 or 5% mark, even 6%. Even at the peak of the boom, it was say 6%, but it was nowhere near 15% or thereabouts in the 70s. But you had very high inflation. And then, of course, you had the crash and then a prolonged period of extremely low interest rates, but big spikes of inflation. Why? Government debt. So what do I think is going to happen? I think we're going to get another 5 or 6 years of very low interest rates, or even longer, could be like Japan. And then we're going to see large cycles of heavy inflation, which we've already begun to see. Not pretty. But what happens is that in periods of high inflation, like in 1917, for example, we had the boom phase. But if you look at the 40s, which is very similar to what we're going through now, properties grew massively as a ratio of average earnings. So this is another useful one because it shows house prices as a multiple of earnings. And you can see here, there was a massive spike, high inflation, low interest rates, and huge demand equals big rise in house prices. And arguably the biggest we've seen, the biggest decline in affordability that we've seen nearly all century. I mean, you had this, But the thing is that this part of the chart is a bit deceiving, because it says, well, okay, prices went right up and affordability, the multiples of earnings declined. In other words, you started off with 4 times earnings for a house in 1996, and then it went up to 8 times. But what it didn't tell you was that you had massively declining interest rates from 1990, 15%, and then they declined hugely. And then they declined even more. And so, of course, property prices would increase as a multiple of income. So that's why this is slightly deceptive, and why I only talk about this in the context of rising prices. But as I said, it kind of ignores the interest rate thing. Anyway, so in short, what do I see the future as? Well, I just see more property madness for another 3 years, and
maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, maybe 4. It's hard to see it going beyond that. Then there'll be a crash. Then the cycle will repeat itself. I've lived through 2 crashes now, and it's pretty ugly. But you know, the market picks itself up, and generally, when you have increasing population and decreasing supply, and in this case, a lack of affordable housing being built in this country, then you have a long-term problem with house prices and rent costs. And we know that rents are rising throughout the country, and it's just getting very gnarly for a lot of people. But the reality is that in a high inflationary environment, like in the 1940s, with low interest rates, people want to get their money into property. And in the States, I follow the property market there a bit. And there's some very good commentators who I follow and analysts, and what they're saying is that the market in the States is generally driven by investors trying to get out of cash and into something that will hedge against cash. And houses do that because people got to live somewhere, and rents generally rise in line with inflation, provided you don't have compromised property and all of that good stuff. So, so in summary, overall, the markets are insane. I don't like it, but we have to do things to be quicker off the mark for these ultra competitive segments. So we're doing that, and the markets will probably continue being bonkers for a while. The time to worry is when people will think it goes on forever or will go on forever. This doesn't go on forever. It's a cycle, and you've seen that it happens every 18 years or so, and it goes back a very long time. But anyway, there it is. Any final words from you, Martin?
Yeah, I want to add that also Uber increased the cost. It was £36, now it's 45.
Yeah, but remember, we pay in the end because, you know, we offset that against commission and all that. It's okay. We don't, well, we do mind, but you know what? We have to have these Uber things. If we didn't have Uber, we wouldn't really have a business. So we're very lucky that they are so well, that they exist, that they're good with us. They really do work hard for us, and we're very lucky to have them as our viewing partner, as it were. So they're great. They are generally very, very good. I'm overall very happy with them, and there it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you from me, and final word from you, Martin. Come on, say something profound if you would.
Thank you from me, and have a nice day.
That's profound. Love is a beautiful thing. Love your neighbor, as they say. All right, have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.